Hello, everybody, and welcome to Below the 38 Football and Adventures in South Korea. I'm Andrew, and this is the weekend that was. There's only two of us on today's call. Mike is on the other end of the line. Luke has given himself a weekend off because K-League 1 had a weekend off owing to the international break. I think, Mike, this is episode 13, lucky number 13. Just the two of us. There'll be two of us back for another podcast later on this week, previewing the upcoming action in K-League 2. We're both be going to a match this weekend too, so we'll probably get on to that in the second podcast. But before then, I know you watched the Korean Ivory Coast game. I was going to insert this later on into the podcast. I might as well go for it straight away. Korea 0, Ivory Coast 4, Cote d'Ivoire 4. I couldn't watch it. I had family over. You, I think, watched it. A, how was it? And B, was it worth missing out on the whole weekend of K-League 1 action for that?
Certainly not, but there's a lot of negativity online from particularly Korean football fans over that result. A disastrous result, right? Going down 4-0 to the Ivory Coast. There was a bit of optimism before that. It would be a Kickstarter for World Cup preparation, but just before we jump straight onto the negatives, Korea hit the post several times in that game, and there's certainly a lot of bite in their attack. But of course the main thing is, and the main question is, how are Korea supposed to be setting up and playing when they head over to Mexico? Because that's not clear right now. So just to compare, I also I'll be honest, I watched a highlight of England versus Uruguay, and that was very much an England B team, but they're all players who are coming in to fit into a system and to see if there are players who could step in for injuries, players who could actually step up if they finish the season strongly, and you could see that the England plan is there, even if the result wasn't positive. For this Korea game, I'm not sure what is going to be drawn from it. It was not very clear to see what the system is, and I'd be very nervous going into this World Cup. Of course, form doesn't mean a lot once you hit a tournament, as we've seen. If you remember, Russia in 2018 had some of the worst international form going into a tournament ever, I think, and they actually did really well, at least in the opening round of that. So, but yeah, I would be a bit nervous if I was a Korea fan going into this tournament, because it doesn't look very clear what the team is doing.
They got South Africa, Mexico, and then either Czechia, who scraped past Ireland obviously last week, and or Denmark in their pool, in their group. Denmark, if it is to be Denmark, would obviously be incredibly tough opponents. Mexico on home soil would be incredibly tough opponents. It's hard to know what to make of South Africa, but yeah, I agree with you. Like I've noticed a lot of the anger online as well, shall we say, but I always think as well, like, and I'm not excusing the manager Hong Min-bo from any blame in this, but one of the problems I always think with the Korean national team and all the teams, all the bigger teams in the AFC, is the qualifications a dawdle every single time, and it's just, who is the other big team in your group? Is it Iran? Is it Australia? Is it Saudi Arabia? Is it Japan? It hasn't been Japan now for a long, long time. It hasn't been Australia for a long, long time. They seem to have drawn Iran a lot the time that I've been living in Korea. But a lot of the other games are against extremely mediocre sides, primarily from Central Asia or the Middle East, and they don't perform at a level that you would expect. I would have thought the Koreans do. There's a lot of draws in their qualification games, and I think then when they go to the World Cup, there's always that just a little bit of a shock that there's a huge step up in standard then compared to what they're used to. There's nothing we can do about it. Like there's no great jeopardy when it comes to Korea's qualification, whereas you look at Italy are going through the playoffs, Sweden, Ukraine, Czechia, Romania, Turkey, Denmark, Ireland, I guess, Wales, Northern Ireland. These teams have to fight much harder for a space at the World Cup, and therefore the qualification points are so important. You can't afford to drop points along the way. But just ultimately, Korea, Japan, and Australia, they can afford to drop points away to Lebanon or at home to United Arab Emirates, because ultimately it's not going to have any impact on how the rest of the qualification goes.
Right. I mean, it doesn't seem to have really picked up on the radar at all in Korea. The women's team did okay, had a fairly don't even call it successful Asian Cup recently. They got through the opening round with 7 points, blasted Uzbekistan 6-0, and then of course Japan, the eternal spectre that looms over Korean football standards, dispatched them there. I thought when the draw came out, this was a decent group for Korea. Not to denigrate the other countries, particularly Mexico. You'd expect to be, it's got to be their time this time to make a real mark in the World Cup. But Denmark or Czechia, or dare I say Ireland? Of course, I wanted to see Seamus have a swan song there. But these are games Korea should be thinking of winning, and now I'm not so sure.
We can definitely park that for now. There's going to be plenty of time to preview the upcoming World Cup this June. There'll be no K-League 1 at the time. I don't even remember what the K-League 2 schedule is, but it's possible we'll have some time off then as well. Certainly there'll be plenty of time to get into it. Remember, you can follow us on all major forms of social media at Below the 38, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And Mike has started uploading these podcasts onto where are these gone? These gone everywhere, haven't they?
It's everywhere. There may be a slight rejig and redoing of that over the coming week or so. So just hold your horses on that just for now.
Okay, we'll return to that again some other time. So 2026 K-League 2 weekend that's just gone by. Again, there were a lot of matches, 8 matches. One team, as usual, had a bye week. Fortunately, that was Gimhae. They managed to lose all their matches up until this point. As ever, when we do these shows, Mike, you don't have to go through every game. Just summarize as best you can the 8 matches that took place last weekend in K-League 2.
Well, let's start from the top then, shall we? So actually, we now have a 3-way battle for the title. That's emerging. That's quite clear. So Suwon saw off Pardew in a game with 3 penalties to continue their 100% record. But they trail the other Suwon, shall we say, by 3 points, but they have played a game less. But those the other Suwon, the Blue Wings, they top the table. An industrious 1-0 win at Yongin. I'm sure you'll tell us more about that a little bit later. But it looks like this is a no-nonsense Suwon Blue Wings this season. It's they've learned a lesson of the last 2 years, haven't they? It seems. But Busan, they are contenders. They've won again away at Cheongju thanks to a late goal, and they remain undefeated in the league as well. So. There's definitely a decent top 3 emerging there. But before we move on to perhaps the big game of the weekend, I would say, let's just get this bit out of the way. Songnam nil, Gimpo nil. Cheonan 1, Jeonnam nil. Asan 1, Hwasong nil. Even Ansan 1, Gyeongnam 1. Okay? Right, so that's everyone outside of the playoffs done, except for Gimpo, who we'll see how they get on this week. But also, Gimhae, they had a weekend off to hopefully forget what football is, because it seems like they need it at the moment, because they're looking like facing Shihung at the moment, who have a 100% record in the K3. They went to Busan Gyotong at the weekend and they got a handy win there. So that's shaping up for the promotion relegation playoff already. But let's get on to the big one. It was down in Daegu. Slight caveat, someone pointed out, so on social media I got the attendance wrong. For some reason the Daegu fans were not added into the number there, so apologies for that one. And of course Daegu did travel well to Busan, and they had over 10,000 for this game against E-Land. However, they may have wished they hadn't turned up because, well, it didn't go quite well for them, and that's 2 defeats on the bounce, because of course E-Land saw the return of their own Mancunian king in the away end as they strode out to a resounding 3-1 win. So E-Land, I think they've finally turned up at last. They've been tipped by many pundits to do well this season. They've been pretty poor so far, but now it seems like it's starting to go right for them. They've moved up to 5th, but that's 2 defeats on the bounce for Daegu, who they're having a bit of a K2 shock that teams like Songnam, etc. have had in the past. And there might be 3 automatically up, but if Daegu assumed they were going to be one of them, it's not looking that way at the moment. Busan and E-Land and maybe even Gimpo are hot on their tails at the moment, and it's shaping up to be quite an intriguing promotion battle. Except I would say probably the 2 Suwon teams look almost certain to go up at this stage anyway.
Yeah, just having a look at those goals again. We talked about this last week. Maybe if this trend continues into next week. We could probably have a chat about it on the next week's show in a little bit more detail. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams didn't score in K-League 2 last weekend, and only 3 teams scored 2 or more goals. Suwon FC, Busan I-Park, and Seoul E-Land. Top scored with 3 down in Daegu. That game had 4 goals in it. A lot of matches at the weekend had 1 or 2 goals in it. I don't know what it is. Just the goals just seem to have dried up this season, and we're always wary of the dreaded 0-0 for K-League 2 on Footballogy, and the more and more we go to these matches, the more often we go to these matches, the more likely it is we're going to land ourselves a 0-0, like Songnam 0, Gimpo FC 0. It's a pity because, I have no explanation as to why this is the case, but there does seem to be a difficulty in a lot of these teams scoring. So the table, as Mike has pretty much just gone through it already there anyway. Suwon, Busan, Suwon, 1, 2, 3. Daegu are now 6 points off first. Of course, they don't need to finish first to go up. They just need to finish top 3. So they're still only 3 points away from Suwon FC, albeit Suwon FC do have a game in hand. But it's not a particularly promising start for Daegu, and they did struggle, if you remember, the first 3 matches as well. Perhaps fortunate to win all 3 of those games. So you look at their goals scoring record already. They've scored 10 and conceded 10 in K-League 2. It's absolutely shocking stuff this early in the season. There's not too many teams that have conceded more goals than them. I know Cheongju have, and Gimhae have. That could be it. I think Daegu have one of the leakiest defenses in K-League 2 already. But like you were saying as well, like when teams go down, like this is Suwon's 3rd season there. I don't know when Busan were relegated. It seems like it's a long time ago. Songnam, Jeonnam Dragons, Gyeongnam, they've all been down and failed to go back up again. And Daegu are running that risk now if they don't get out of K-League 1 at the first possible opportunity. So anyway, thanks for that. So let's have a look at the games we were at. We both went to a K-League 2 match at the weekend, and fortunately we didn't see the dreaded 0-0. But were the games any good? I'll let you go first, Mike. You were at Ansan Greeners 1, Gyeongnam FC 1. Well, how was it?
This is a mid to lower clash in the K2, so make of that what you will. But I said before, like last season was dire, but all you really want is your team to play, and Ansan are much better watch this season, and it continues. That's all you can really ask for, I think. Ansan are never going up until the politics around the club change, and there's investment, etc., and then it can be entertained. But positives, match-up Chol. He got his 2nd goal of the season. And Gyeongnam led thanks to some poor goalkeeping actually from Lee Seung-bin, making his 201st appearance, but he basically let it go through his hand. It was a thunderous shot, but you would have thought he should have he got a hand to it, but it wasn't. It was a weak hand. Then again, he went on to make some amazing stops, so you'd think Gyeongnam, draw seems fair on the balance. Gyeongnam looks solid but not great, and Ansan are the kind of blending Jekyll and Hyde into all their games this season. Some great moments and some terrible moments mixed in, which is, fair enough. You're going to get your money's worth. It's a team worth watching this season if you're interested as a neutral. But neither of these teams look likely to trouble promotion and, thankfully, I would say, relegation at the moment.
Yeah, I'd agree. I agree with that. At the moment, Ansan definitely look like they're like 17th. It's hard to imagine there's going to be 16 teams finishing above Ansan this season, or Gyeongnam for that matter. But it's also 2 unbeaten on the bounce for Ansan, having opened with a 4-1 win to start the season. So not too bad at this point.
13 home games out a window.
Okay, yeah. And now they've started a couple of home games, haven't they? So, or 2 in a row, 3 in a row, 3 home games in a row. So I presume there's a nice spell coming up on the road. Pick up a couple of points there, and
it's a lot of this is a problem for a lot of teams. Ansan are very home heavy in the first part of the season, and then more away heavy in the later. A real problem in the fixture list.
Yeah, well, they're playing Asan this weekend, I think. So if they can pick up at least something from the game before they have to go on this mad run of fixtures away from home, pick up whatever they can between now and then. I didn't know what to say about the Blue Wings game mainly because there was nothing to say about the Blue Wings game that was at. Feshin scored his first goal for the club since moving from Busan I Park. That was after 3 minutes. A sun-kissed Young Muda Stadium. I thought this was going to be a blowout. It proved to be anything but that. I think Suwon were comfortable 1-0 winners in the end, but nevertheless it ended just 1-0. And the only thing I talk about now, like you mentioned this earlier on, it does feel like they're just going to bludgeon their way to K-League 1 promotion. They made serious mistakes 2 years ago by handing the reins to Yong Gu-hun, a complete novice of a manager. And then Byung Sung Wan, very nice man, very gentle individual, but whether or not he's cut out to be manager of a club like the Blue Wings, I think the answer to that is emphatically no after what happened at the end of last season, unfortunately for him. But they've obviously gone and they've hired Lee Jong-hyo, and I think the mentality now is promotion at all costs. And like last season, goals against was embarrassing for them. I wrote about this for K-League United. I think there were 18 occasions last season they fell behind in the match, and only 3 of those 18 they came back to win. This is obviously really, really damaging if you do this. Seoul E-Land scored against them first on the opening day of the season in the first half, and since then they've gone basically 4.5 matches without conceding a goal, and they even managed to give the goalkeeper Kim Jong-un a rest at the weekend. So 9 goals scored, 1 against. It's not massively exciting going forward, but it's obviously very stable at the back, and I think definitely the fans will put up with this, because the alternative is this Jekyll and Hyde nonsense we saw for the last couple of years. But I'd imagine absolutely everybody in Suwon just wants to see them go up, irrespective of style, performances, just results. The only thing that matters now is results, and I think that's what we're seeing at the moment. So I look for, like, I wonder, will there come a time when it starts to click under Lee Jong-hyo and maybe they do start blowing teams away? But at the moment, as I said, it's very secure. They don't look like dropping points anywhere really, and if they can keep this run of form up until they go on a difficult spell, the start of the summer they have Busan, Suwon and Daegu to come, I think, in 3 weekends in a row. If they're able to maintain this close to a perfect start, then it could be irrelevant in many ways how those matches go. So yeah, Yongin 0, Suwon 1. Yongin were decent enough. Like, I'm kind of surprised to see Yongin down where they are. They have way too much quality to be sitting on 2 points from their opening 5 matches. But goal scoring is a problem. Goal scoring is a massive problem for them. So there we go. There was the 2 matches that we were at. I don't think either of them are going to make the highlights reel at the end of the season, but maybe some of the other matches would have. If you were allowed to go anywhere else at the weekend, where would you have chosen? I mean, I picked Daegu 1, E-Land 3, just simply because on paper it was a massive match, and as you said, the potential resurrection of Seoul E-Land as a championship force. Are you going for that one as well?
Yeah, probably. But if you're if we're gonna take away that fixture from my own choices, then I've got 7 to choose from with a total of 11 goals. But maybe Busan's late win at Cheongju would be the next most significant of the round. I guess they did well to remain energetic to the end and take the points. So
well played. So Daegu 1, Seoul E-Land 3, huge results at the top of the table. Chungbuk Cheongju energetically going down 2-1 at home to Busan I Park. Busan also, the goalkeeper also saved a penalty in that game too. So yeah, Busan just won't go away. You have a quiz you want to tell everybody about.
It was just one of those oddities of the way fixtures are remembered in Korea, because yeah, on the Footballogy app on Sunday it said 11 years ago you were at the Hwa Stadium watching Asan versus Chungju Hummel. Okay, so the quiz was, what's wrong with this scene? And of course there's quite a few takeaways there. First, 11 years ago Chungnam Asan didn't exist in any shape or form, whether you call it the police team or not. So that's your first problem. And of course 11 years ago it was Ansan Mugunghwa who were in that stadium, but in the history books it states, of course, it was Asan in the Hwa Stadium all the way back from 2014. This is a big problem because Ansan Hallelujah go down as Goyang Zaikro, which is also a real problem on internet databases and the way clubs are remembered. So bit of a thinking point there. Further, both of the clubs who played 11 years ago in the K-League 2 in that fixture, neither of them exist anymore. So a little bit of a warning as well to adding lots and lots of clubs.
But isn't that weird too? Like,
Maybe
you
it
have a
won't work
situation where clubs have folded, and then we get down to about 10 teams or 11 teams around about the time of COVID, and now we're at 17. And as you said, just randomly adding clubs. Just, you apply for K-League membership, in you come. You have media facilities, you have home and away dressing rooms, you have what looks like a proper stadium, you have Wi-Fi, there's somewhere to park the buses. Yeah, welcome to K-League 2. And yeah, it probably is a warning sign to everybody else. I mean, does that mean that you're, according to Footballogy, are you not Chungnam Asan's number one fan then?
I'm not sure, I haven't actually checked that, but definitely seen Asan far more times on Footballogy than I have in reality.
Yeah. I wonder how many people care as well, you know, outside of you and people of Footballogy. But again, if the clubs are, obviously if the clubs are documenting their own history, then none of this stuff really matters. If they aren't, then it's a huge issue, because these fixtures will just disappear.
It is indeed an issue. I've seen official records which are incorrect, which is quite worrying. But that's quite a big issue for another time. So maybe if some more fun quizzes pop up, we'll get them onto Insta. So look out for them. Yeah,
check out Below the 38, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube for more of Mike's random Sunday night quizzes for you to get your teeth into. We could get on to that talking point again sometime. I just want to ask you about this one. I wrote about this on the K-League United website last year when Songnam played against Suwon. And I understand that this is written from somebody who goes to follow a team that brings a lot of fans to the games. And that for 95% or more of the K-League 2 away games, this is not an issue. But it is an issue. And it's an issue in K-League 1 sometimes too, when Seoul or Jeonbuk are traveling to places like Gangwon, Suwon FC and Gimcheon, and away fan sections are being sold out in a couple of minutes. Great, they've sold out the away fan section, and then you look at the game on the television and the stadium is barely 30% full. So what I just don't understand, we see this time and time again in K-League 1 and K-League 2, well, not time, it happens every year, that there is demand for more tickets. So I just don't understand why the clubs are not supplying that demand. So the Blue Wings brought 3,500 fans to Yongin. The away fan section was sold out. I've seen photographs of Suwon fans in the home end. They're the ones who would have snuck in, I guess, under the cover of darkness. There are messages on the board saying if you're caught wearing opposition team uniforms in the wrong section, you will be evicted from the stadium. I'm sure many more fans would have wanted to be there, but they had to watch the game on television. The official attendance was 10,500 or so, and the stadium holds about 37,000. Am I wrong in this? Do you think the clubs are just not doing enough to, even if there's a one-off basis, the one time this could happen all season for Yongin, but there's two sections of segregation either side of the Blue Wings end. Do they really need segregation at these matches? Would it not just make more sense to sell more tickets?
Just on the segregation point, probably not, because it takes an effort to be angry. There's not a century of a history between communities here. You've barely got a decade of history from many clubs. So, but I'm going to counter that and say, look, there's far too much gulf between the haves and have-nots in the K-League. The financial asymmetry is huge. Yet at the same time, the quality is not reflective in the financial outlay anyway. So because of that, gate receipts are not a big part of a club's revenue, regardless. A big payday when a team comes in. It's not like, you know, Grimsby getting Manchester United at home or something, in, you know, getting a big payout so they can sustain themselves for a season. That's just not the case. Blue Wings coming, I mean, it might be a nice revenue bump or something, but it's not going to impact the club season as far as I understand the structure in Korea. It's more of an issue of how the whole football structure is governed to me. Basically, if we're going to increase away capacities, you're going to fundamentally change the nature of football being home and away in the first place, in my opinion. For me, the focus has got to be on why the game isn't being built. And one of the criticisms there is they've just dumped more teams into the same catchment area for this season. You could say some of those teams existed, that's fair enough, but Yongin have come out of nowhere, and that was a catchment area for other teams. So I think they need to be building the home fans, the home crowd basics, and then maybe that will bring the revenue from more TV viewers. I'm not sure on that, if that will work out, but or simply maybe capture 2,000-3,000 of those Blue Wings fans, put them somewhere, brainwash them into being Yongin Cheonan fans, and then that's another solution.
What about then from the other argument? If you forget about the financial one, just is it right? Is it? Do we need a situation where fans are locked out of a stadium that's 30% full and 70% empty, just because for the one game of the season where the away fans might outnumber the home fans? Like, if the stadium holds 37,000 people, there aren't 37,000 people in Korea who want to watch this match. Obviously, there's nowhere near 37,000 people in Korea who want to watch Yongin versus the Blue Wings. But even with a stadium that big and only 10,000 added, there are people who were not able to go to watch the game, despite the fact that there were tens of thousands of empty seats.
Right. I mean, it's complicated by the incredible stadium construction projects here. I have no idea. I understand you're saying the financial sense there. It does make financial sense, but none of those stadiums made financial sense in the first place. There needs to be some very big questions answered about what the goals of those stadiums were realistically, not some utopia about 40,000 people descending on Yongin on a Saturday afternoon. I get your point, but for me, home and away fixtures are there for a reason, and even though it is ridiculous and it would make sense to let more away fans in, we have to be careful that it doesn't become the norm, because it would become the norm, and then smaller teams would become even more irrelevant, I think, in the long term. It's
cool. Well, if you have any thoughts on that, get in touch. We'd like to know what you think. You'll see an article of mine on K-League United about this, so feel free to completely ravage and savage Mike's point of view and come on and tell me that I'm wonderful for the things that I've said. Or if it's the other way around, then feel free not to listen next time. But anyway, that's it. That's the weekend that was on Below the 38 Football Adventures in South Korea. I'm Andrew, this is Mike, and the two of us will be back later on this week for another preview of K-League 2. Thanks for listening, everybody. Goodbye.
Take care, everyone.